All right, so a quick little recap from the race last weekend, Vert Till You Hurt, put on by Pace Trail Series. So it was a 3-peak, it ended up being a 5-peak race. We did 3 different sections in West Kelowna to make a 37-kilometer, very vertical intensive event. So the distances ended up being, for Smith Creek, we did 16 kilometers and it ended up being 530 meters. The second one was Goats Peak, that was 8.6 kilometers and it was 720 meters. So that section was very steep and quite technical. So not a lot of running up on that one, but pretty good descending. And then Mount Boucherie was 13 kilometers and it was 600 meters. So quite runnable, really nice grade and well-maintained trails. So it ended up being very leg muscle intensive. I wouldn't say that my cardio was the limiting factor. It was definitely just muscle endurance and I guess strength. So my time for each section was 1:29 for Smith Creek. So I definitely went out very hard for Smith Creek. Tried to stay with the lead pack, which was my plan, and I did. So that was pretty sweet. I finished second overall, second female for Smith Creek. And then for Goats Peak, the 2 ascents, I did that in 1:11, which I felt pretty good about. Yeah, I felt pretty strong on that one still. And then when we got to the final section for Mount Boucherie, that took me 1:41. And that one relatively was definitely my slowest leg. My legs were just cramping pretty hard and the muscles were getting pretty fatigued. And I felt okay on the ups, I was still able to run, but I was not really able to run very quickly on the downs. I think I may have been going the same speed, if not slower, on the way down. So that definitely slowed me down relative to the other racers. Just overall, how I felt during the race, I felt really strong on the first climb up Smith Creek. So it was about a 10-kilometer climb. And yeah, I felt really good. I was keeping the lead pack in sight because it's super switchbacky, so you can see people right ahead of you, which was nice. So you're kind of chasing the people ahead of you. And then I had a couple guys tailing me for the last couple kilometers on the way up, which pushed me to keep going hard, which was nice. And then when we started coming down, I felt good for the first 1 or 2 kilometers, but then my legs started to cramp up a little bit, which was pretty early. I wasn't expecting that. It wasn't necessarily my quads that were having problems. It was kind of all the supporting muscles, so like my hip flexors and my piriformis, and even my calves were starting to get tight really early on. So I definitely wasn't expecting that. I thought that it wouldn't be until much later in the race after Goats Peak. So I dialed it back a little bit on the descending because I wanted to have something left in my legs to finish the rest of the day. So I still finished with a strong time, but yeah, the muscle soreness was already starting to kick in on the first section. Goats Peak felt pretty good. I was able to push the ups pretty hard. Yeah, I didn't really feel limited in my uphill speed because it was pretty much power hiking for both ascents of Goats Peak. But then the downs, I wasn't able to let her rip as much as I might have normally. I don't think it was too much of an issue because it was so steep that, yeah, you were kind of like, you couldn't just like fully open it up because it was pretty steep and loose and you're going by people. But then I really felt it on Mount Boucherie because it was a pretty nice runnable grade, super smooth trails, but I just couldn't really get it going. On the ups, I definitely felt like I was trudging a bit. I was still running, or I was in the running motion. I don't know if I was moving that much faster. But then on the downs, I could really tell that I had really slowed down. Yeah, I was definitely not opening it up, which was a bummer, but still running, so that was good. Yeah, still happy with it, obviously. It was a great event. And it's interesting how having a kid in childbirth kind of changes your perspective on everything, because during the race it's like, oh wow, my legs hurt, and then I think about it for a second. I'm like, actually no, this is not pain, this doesn't hurt, this is just uncomfortable. and it's not a big deal, and it's only going to be like a 4-hour event, which is nothing compared to, 24 hours of labor. So everything is relative, which is, puts things into perspective. Anyways, let's move on. So nutrition, I kept track of the calories that I took in. I was pretty stoked on how much I was able to take in. So I did 2 bottles for the first section in Smith Creek, which was my scratch and maple syrup mixture. And then I did 1 bottle on Goats Creek, and then I did 1.5-ish bottles for my butchery. And then in between, I did a lot of squeezy, easy to consume food. I brought an assortment, but I know that usually when I'm racing, I don't really like to eat after I'm done racing, or especially not in between segments. So I did some squeeze, knack, the sweet potato and butternut squash. I did the go-go squeeze. I did Coke. I did, what else did I do? I had these little rice bars that I made the week before, and a knack waffle. Yeah, so I ended up taking in about 500 calories on my first section, 750 calories in between the first and second, which was great. I took in about 200 on the second section, and then another 700 in between sections, and then another 200 on my final segment. So I ended up taking in about 2,500 calories, which was, I think, pretty solid. And I tried the Precision 90-gram gel, and it was super yummy. So I hadn't tried it before. This is my first time. And I took it in between the final, like in between segment 2 and 3, and then during segment 3. So I had probably a third of the pouch right before I started, and then I was sucking on it throughout the final segment. It was really good. It tasted kind of like tapioca pudding. It went down smooth. You didn't have to like chew it, and it had a resealable cap, which was sweet. So it was a very large gel. It had 360 calories, so you could just kind of take some, put it back in your bag, and then have some a little bit later. So yeah, that was sweet. I'm excited to try that again in the future on long runs and races. Yeah, squeezy food, super clutch. That's the best for me when I'm going hard. Yeah, so that was nutrition. And then how did I feel after the race? So I was definitely tired. I mean, it was like a 4.5 hour effort. Yeah, my total time ended up being 4 hours and 20 minutes of running. Yeah, which is a pretty long time, plus the time in between. So there was probably 1.5 to 2-ish hours in between finishing and then starting the next segment. So that really draws out your day, because we started at 7 a.m. and I think finished at 2:30-ish, maybe 3. Yeah, so it just makes for a long day. But I think I was pretty good at staying on top of calories, and then in between segments I would just kind of hang out and just like sit down or lay back and let my legs rest for a little bit. In terms of things I would have done differently, I maybe went out a bit hot for the first leg. It's hard to know if going so hard on the climb is what really did my legs in, or if it's just, it was a lot of volume. And I've really only been running for 4 months, which is kind of funny to think about. Yeah, because I'm 9 months postpartum now. Yeah, pretty much exactly 9 months. I didn't run for the first couple months after having Zoe, and then I was really slow and gradual reintroducing running. I was doing like walk to run, walk a minute, run a minute type thing, like really slow reintroduction. And then we went to Moab in October. That's when I started running more. And then I started running consistently with a plan probably in November. Yeah, so maybe like five months of training. And then obviously before I had Zoe, I wasn't running the 10 weeks leading into having giving birth. And then I really had dialed back my running prior to that as well. So when you put it into perspective, I haven't really been training much before this event. So I'm pretty happy with how it went. But I was surprised at how quickly my accessory muscles seemed to be affected. So there's probably a bunch of different factors there, but it's interesting. Yeah, but really I wouldn't change anything. If you don't go out hard, it's kind of hard to know, like, yeah, it's kind of hard to catch up, and it's hard to know how you'll do otherwise. So you kind of have to challenge yourself and push yourself. Otherwise, it's just like another day of training. Like, that's what differentiates a race from a training run, is that you can go harder, you have other people to push you. Yeah, you have other people to race against, and yeah, that's what makes it fun and different. So yeah, it was a hard format. It was a pretty crazy amount of vertical and not a lot of distance, especially for the area that we were in. Like, Okanagan's not really known for a ton of vertical, but the trails were literally just up and down. Yeah, there was no like flat running sections or just like casual, really opening it up sections. You were either going up or down. So that was interesting. I think it's gonna be a really good training stimulus. I'm definitely taking it easy for the next few days, letting my body recover and actually gain the adaptations that I'm gonna get from this. Yeah, yesterday I took it super easy, took like 2 naps, just kind of hung around the house. Today I'm gonna go swimming, probably go for a walk. Tomorrow maybe a bike ride, and then probably one more day of taking it easy, maybe a super light run depending on how the hip flexors are feeling. But there's no need to push it. I'll get back into running training probably on the weekend, and then we'll be down in Moab, so it's gonna be a sweet 2-week training block. And then we're only 1 month out from the Wallhorse Traverse, which is the next Pace Trail Series event, and it goes from Kelowna to Nirvana. So that is going to be a beautiful course, and I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, so I'll be releasing a race video with highlights from this event. This is my first time trying to wear the little Insta360 Go, so I think I may have gotten half the clips that I was trying to get. It was hard to know, like, when I pushed it, if it was recording. As I got later on in the race, I realized that it vibrated if it was on, so now I'll know for next time. But I think we got some clips, so hopefully I'll be able to share some of the highlights from the race, and you'll get to see some of the beautiful course that we were on. Yeah, so look forward to that. It should be coming out in the next week, and thanks for following along, and I'll catch you next time.